We're going to take a look in this video at second inversion chords. Triads in root position and triads in first inversion are quite flexible regarding where we can place them, but we can't just use second inversion or 6/4 chords wherever we please. Unlike root position and first inversion triads, which don't contain any dissonance, second inversion chords do contain dissonance. Between the bass and the tenor we have the perfect fourth interval, which in that particular context is considered a dissonant interval. So there are very specific situations in which you can use second inversion chords. Those are passing, cadential, pedal, and arpeggiated. In this particular video we're going to look at the passing 6/4 specifically. So the idea with the passing 6/4 chord is that it embellishes another chord. Chords can either serve a functional or a linear role. The functional chords define our harmonic progression model, in other words tonic, predominant, dominant, back to tonic, whereas linear chords are embellishing. So the most standard instance of the passing 6/4 chord is a linear chord that embellishes two instances of another chord, where the one instance is in root position and the other instance is in first inversion. So we're in B flat major here, or G minor, but we're going to go with B flat major. Let's start with a tonic triad in root position. Then we'll have the same triad, but now in first inversion. So we're utilizing what's called voice exchange here. If you look at the difference between this chord and this one, the inner voices, the alto and the tenor, remain constant, whereas the outer voices exchange the notes that they're playing. So here we have B flat in the bass going to B flat in the soprano, D in the soprano going to D in the bass. Let's write in our Roman numeral analysis so far. B flat major, tonic triad, tonic first inversion. Now let's put in a dominant chord here. So this is just the dominant in root position at the moment. You'll notice we've got doubled root, third, fifth. So this sounds fine. But of course it's not a passing 6/4 progression. A passing 6/4 progression requires this chord should be in second inversion. So let's put it in second inversion and see what happens. To put it in second inversion, we just move the bass note down from the root to the fifth of the chord. And now if we look at the configuration of notes we have the root, the third, and the doubled fifth. Now in a second inversion chord, standard practice is to double the fifth. So this is a perfectly functional second inversion chord here. And now that we've put that in, we have our standard common progression for the passing 6/4 chord. Let's listen to it. And there it is. We have nice voice leading. The bass is moving up by step. That's what gives the chord its name of the passing 6/4, because of this bass line, the passing C between the B flat and D of the tonic triad. In the soprano we have this nice descending line which contrasts with the ascending line of the bass. In the alto we have this constant succession of fifth scale degrees, and in the tenor we have a neighbor note figure. And that is your standard passing 6/4 progression. So we built this on the tonic. Is that the only place we can build a passing 6/4? No. Another common position that you'll find it is on the subdominant. We'll transpose up a diatonic fourth, in this case a perfect fourth. Although it's registerally quite high, you can hear that the effect is fine, but it doesn't necessarily sound like B flat major, does it? Because it just sounds like we've played the same progression now in E flat major. So let's increase the strength of the feeling of B flat by adding in a tonic B flat triad at the beginning and then cadencing in B flat at the end. So we'll add a bar in here. Let's put in our fix our Roman numeral figures here. We're now starting on the subdominant, and then we're going to cadence 5/1. So let's Let's hear our passing 6/4 progression starting on the subdominant, firmly embedded in B flat major. As you can hear, that's pretty effective. So if you're given a melody to harmonize and you see this descending stepwise motion ending on the tonic or ending on the subdominant, you can be fairly sure that that's going to be a good position to put a passing 6/4 progression in. Interestingly, we can also reverse this progression very effectively. So this time we're going to start with the tonic chord in first inversion and end with it in root position. Let's hear how that sounds. So again, it's a very effective progression. So if you're given a melody to harmonize and you also see an ascending stepwise motion like this, you'll know that a passing 6/4 chord will likely work there, especially if the ascending progression is starting on the root or starting on the subdominant. So although this progression is most commonly seen starting on the tonic or the subdominant, it can also be effective when it's built on other scale degrees. So let's take a look at what happens if we take this passage here and we transpose our passing 6/4 progression down a diatonic, in this case minor, third. So now we're starting here on the supertonic, then we're going to submediant 6/4 and ending on the tonic in first inversion. Voice leading should be fine, although we've transposed. Let's hear how it sounds. So although 2 going to 6 would usually be considered retrogression, in this particular progression it actually works quite effectively. Let's see what happens if we transpose it again. This time we'll try starting on mediant. So up a diatonic second. Now interestingly, the chord in the middle here is going to be a diminished chord, and it's going to be in second inversion, of course. Now we know that diminished chords are usually placed in first inversion, and we usually double the third, not the fifth, whereas in this chord we have the doubled fifth. We have A, C, E flat, E flat. So it's an unconventional use of a diminished triad. Let's hear how it sounds. Well, it's not terrible, but there is a more common passing progression which uses the leading tone triad in a more conventional manner. Let's have a quick look at it. So this version of the leading tone triad again moves between tonic in root position and tonic in first inversion, and we'll see that it presents a more conventional use of the leading tone triad. So now we have the root of the chord, the third doubled, and the fifth, and the third is in the bass. So this is how a leading tone triad is typically supposed to be used. Let's hear how this sounds. An effective, strong progression. So if you find yourself in a situation where you're trying to use the leading tone in a passing 6/4 context, perhaps think again and see if it would work in this more common context as a first inversion triad. So we've tried this progression now, starting on the tonic, starting on the supertonic, starting on the mediant, starting on the subdominant. What about if we start on the dominant? So we'll copy our progression once more. Now we need to transpose this up a diatonic third. Let's switch around some voices because our range is getting rather high here. Let's fix our spelling. Sorry, I just realized these should be 5/7 throughout. Let's hear this progression. the change from dominant to a pre-dominant chord and back to dominant isn't particularly effective. It sounds a little weak. So this particular progression is perhaps the least successful of the various positions that we've tried this passing 6/4 progression in. Let's see what happens if we start on the sub-mediant. And let's need to change our Roman numeral figuration here. It's sub-mediant to mediant in second inversion to sub-mediant in first inversion. Let's hear that. So again, a fairly successful progression. The last progression we're going to try then is leading tone to sub-dominant second inversion to leading tone first inversion. Let's see if that'll work. Once again then we're going to transpose up by a diatonic second. The voice leading shouldn't be problematic. It looks okay. Let's change our figuration here. So we have this unusual use of the leading tone triad here in root position with the doubled root. As we know, it would normally be used in first inversion with the doubled third. And here again we have it this time in first inversion, but again with the doubled root. So let's listen to it and see how it sounds. Well, it's really not too bad. So there you have it. We've tried the standard passing 6/4 progression on each of the scale degrees of the major scale. We found that it can generally be used quite successfully on any of the scale degrees. So it's worth keeping in mind that in a traditional harmonic context, building this progression on the tonic or on the subdominant is the most common approach. Starting on any of the other scale degrees still has the potential to be effective in a less orthodox harmonic setting, however.